So, why does this matter? Why do we care about polls? Why do we care about political socialization? It's because, like I said, there are people who devote their lives to this. There are people who study what a candidate should wear when they come to Wisconsin, what a candidate should say when they come to Wisconsin, what kind of joke they should give. You're going to notice when a candidate is speaking to a group of college students at a Rock the Vote event, they're going to wear jeans and a button down. If a candidate is talking to an AARP organization, they're going to wear a suit and tie. It's all been figured out. All of that stuff's broken down, and then it's transferred to the candidate to try and make them as accessible or attractive to you as possible. It's to a science at this point. And you don't realize it, but it happens all the time. When you look on the news and they show you a candidate who just did a stump speech, look at the background. There's always going to be an African American, there's always going to be someone who's white, there's always going to be males and females, there's always going to be someone who's young. Always. It doesn't matter. Why? Because no one wants to look at a candidate who's standing in a huge arena and everyone behind him is a white male. Right? It's down to a science. It's fascinating to me to look at all the little nuances of everything. It comes down to the color of their tie, to the color of their suit, to the way they do their hair, to where the president spends Thanksgiving. All of those things are polled. All of those things are used as a way to politically motivate you to believe certain things. It's fascinating to me. So things like this. This is all directed. The president didn't just say oh, I want to go high five a bunch of kids. But here's the thing, who's this appealing to me? To me. It's appealing to me. I want my president to be high-fiving kids. I'm a teacher. Take a look at this picture. You see males? Yes. Do you see females? Yes. Do you see young kids? Yes. Do you see adults? Yes. Do you see Latinos? Yes. Do you see maybe an Asian American? It's coordinated. It's all an image to you to try and convince you of specific things. And maybe it may be true. Maybe President Barack Obama really loves to greet students. I don't doubt that. But there's someone behind the scenes who published this photo. It's a White House photo. It was on the White House website. They're going to publish this photo and not the photo of President Obama tripping, right? It's all an image. It's all there for you. Okay, so public opinion. It's the expressed or conveyed opinion of two public officials of what the citizenry believes. Excuse me. Public opinion can be expressed in all sorts of ways. It can be expressed from a poll. You can get called. You may get called at some point in your life for a political poll, all the way to a rally, a riot, or a march. Riots are forms of public opinion. If someone's marching down the street setting fire to all of the public buildings, obviously they're trying to say something. That's considered public opinion. Now, there's a difference between public opinion and your personal opinion. Public opinion is a general consensus. A consensus is an agreed upon idea about an issue. So the consensus is, maybe in our room, the majority of you believe in a specific thing. That would be a consensus. Does it mean that there are people who disagree? Absolutely. Does it mean that they're outnumbered? Probably. So that's the consensus. A divisive opinion, this is almost everything these days. Divisive opinion is where there are two very distinct sides, and you're usually on one of them. I'm going to show you what this looks like in an image in just a second. But this is what politics looks like right now. We have so many divisive opinions about things. We don't have a lot of people in the middle. In fact, the assignment that you have tonight, the discussion, it comes from the week. I read this little piece about the editor writes this little write-up at the beginning of the week every week. And I put it on your Canvas because I want to hear what you think. Essentially what it says is, in 1960, we had 15% independent voters at the time of a presidential candidate or election, meaning that there were 15 people that could go either way. Today we have about 5%. 5% of the entire nation's population isn't sure how they'll vote. At this point, right now, most people know which party they're going to vote for in 2016. They've already decided. We don't even have candidates, but they've already decided. What does that say about us? What does that mean? It was interesting. I asked Kyle, my significant other, yesterday. I said, "Why do you think this happens? How do you think from 1960 to now we've gone from 15 to 5%?" He said, "Because you can turn on the TV and you can watch the news that you want to watch. You can turn on to Fox News and you can listen to the things that you like to listen about. You can listen about how Democrats are a terrible group of people. You can listen how Republicans are a terrible group of people. You don't have to listen to news you don't agree with anymore. You can get on the internet and you can write whatever you want on the internet. You don't have to listen to somebody else. And if you have to listen to someone else, you get to comment, wow, that was really stupid." We live in a culture where that's okay to do now. And in 1960, that wasn't okay to do. It wasn't okay to be a biased news reporter. It wasn't okay. People got fired for that. If they showed a tendency to a specific political party on the air, they would get fired. Nowadays, they get paid more. It's become this culture where you pick your guy and it doesn't matter what that guy thinks. It's like, why is Donald Trump so popular right now? He doesn't have any issues. He's never told you what he's gonna do, right? But people have picked their guy and they're gonna just go with him. He has a ton of support, but he doesn't have any issues. And the reality of it is that people just picked him and now they're gonna stick with him. It's a really interesting concept, and I really want to hear what you think about it. So comment on the Canvas so that I can see your opinion for tomorrow. And then non-opinions, these are things that maybe you don't know about or you just don't have a specific opinion about. I'm going to show you an example here in just a second. A lot of this comes to like stuff about government that just is hard to understand, like the budget. I mean, people have a very strong opinion about whether we should have a balanced budget, but when we get into the nuances, like should the agricultural department get $10 million or $7 million? I don't really have an opinion about it. I don't really know. It's called a non-opinion. So this is a graph in your book. This is sort of what it looks like in a data sense. When political scientists get data like this, then they can kind of figure out if it's a divisive opinion or a consensus opinion. Consensus opinion is where the pie graph has a majority of if people think it's very important or it's not important. So in this, we can see that out of a poll, the majority, 72%, thought it was important to have a degree beyond high school. You know, we can sort of, the consensus here is that obviously it's better to have more degrees. A divisive opinion, this one is about gay marriage. There's a lot of divisive opinions, and this one has actually even changed since 2014. We're a little bit more, there's a little bit more of an opinion in favor of it, but there are a lot of 50-50 issues. The immigration issue, you know, there isn't a clear answer here. So it's kind of a divisive opinion. And then non-opinion, this is about a specific federal budget cut in the agricultural industry. Or, I don't know if it actually says that. But it's like things like, I just don't know enough to say. If you don't know enough to say, it's a non-opinion. If you're just not aware of it. And that's okay, by the way. Lots of people think that it's wrong to not know. Don't debate something that you don't know. It just makes you look worse. Okay, so models of political socialization. So what is political socialization? First, it's the process by which people acquire political beliefs and attitudes. Why do you believe what you believe when it comes to politics? That comes out of your political socialization. And if you spent a good amount of time and you really thought about it, you would probably be able to pinpoint some areas that have caused you to have political socialization. So I'll give you an example. I grew up in a home where my mom is a public school teacher and my dad was a police officer. In my home, without explicitly saying it, my parents believe that government should work for the betterment of people. It is the job of government to help people out, right? They believe in social programs. I grew up with a brother who has a disability. I want the government to help him out. I think that it's important that he receives health care, even though he can't work at a job that would provide him health care. I think it's cool that the government can do that for him. Now, I live with somebody whose parents, his mom is a stay-at-home mom, and his dad was a private lawyer for a very long time. He thinks government's great, but he doesn't think that government should be in your life every single day. It shouldn't be in your face. You should have the opportunity to go to a charter school. You should be able to, if you can succeed, you get to keep your money. That we should send our money to government to go to people who can't get there. Does it mean I'm right and he's wrong? No, it means that our political socialization has caused us to be where we are today. I have two very good friends who are in a relationship that are homosexual. That's my political socialization. I know somebody. I have a face to that issue. Somebody who doesn't might believe something else because they haven't socialized in that area. So your political socialization is how you develop. And I will tell you right now that your political socialization is in the peak of change. From about 17 to about 24 specifically, you do a ton of changing. And then even as you get older, we're going to talk about this in a second, as you get older, your ideas will change. And even if you don't want them to, they will, because I was pretty convinced I was never going to change, and I've already changed some of my political viewpoints. It just is, right? You encounter different people, you have different needs from government, you study different things, there are different issues, you know different people, things like that. Okay, so let's talk about some of these pieces. Education is a source of political socialization. Okay, this is a big one. Please, please, please write this down. We know from studies that the more formal education a person receives, the more likely he or she is to be interested in politics. The more education you have, the more aware you are of your society, the more involved you will be in politics. The more you will read the news, the more you will go to listening sessions, the more you will contact your congressperson. We know that the more education you have, it transfers to the more political activity that you participate in. We also know, and this is really cool, that as you, as young people, learn about politics and you go home to your parents, you're actually giving your parents what we call a second chance at socialization. You're asking your parents to not express, but to explain what they think about certain things, or to understand maybe more deeply the things that they didn't understand. That gives them a second chance at socialization because now they're learning and they're growing and they're being challenged. It's why having discussions at home about politics is good for everybody in that conversation, because it causes everyone to sort of rethink what they think and believe. Peers and peer group influence, this is your number one piece of political socialization right now. We know that people, young people especially, tend to gravitate towards people who share the same beliefs as they do, right? It's your friends. Your friends have the same hobbies and issues and, things like that. That matters. It influences how you think about politics. Opinion leaders, influences. People who are influential in public. So these can be celebrities, these can be Congress people, media figures, religious leaders. Things like Malala Yousafzai, the young girl who was shot by the Taliban. She wrote this book and it was really big in culture and we all knew about it and we'd all heard about it. And now she goes around and she talks about education for girls. She has some influence. She's changing your political socialization. If I took you all to a talk where she talked about that, you might change your political belief about that because she's influential, because she has a story. It'd be different than if I stood up and told you why you should believe in girls' education. Public figures have a lot of influence. And then political change. We know this by polls and other studies, that when we have a new election, when we have like the 2016 presidential election, people tend to believe that it will cause a huge change in our government system, that it will breathe new life into our government. The reality of it is that our government is so entrenched that I'm not entirely sure that anything could change by one person, but we tend to want to gravitate towards the candidates that make us believe that. Think about Paul Ryan. When Paul Ryan walked into the speakership last week, he gave a speech where he talked about how he was ready to change Congress. He wanted to make Congress more efficient and more relevant and things like that. And people want to hear that. That's what we want our politicians to say. We want politicians to say that they're going to go into office and change the system and make it better and give you more and do more for you. Now, does that really happen? Probably not, but we know that politically in our socialization, we want to see that. Okay. So the media, this is huge. You need to understand that the media drives what you think and believe. It's what we call agenda setting. Media can be television, radio, the internet, but it really determines the public policy questions that are debated and considered. So I'm going to give you an example about this, and I'm going to try and stay off my soapbox, okay? The Paris attacks. So the Paris attacks happened on Friday. We can talk about it more if you need to, but you guys aren't Facebook people, are you? Yes, still a little bit? Okay. I was like convinced as I got older that I was always going to stay on the new thing, and I'm already like not on Twitter. Well, I am on Twitter, but I've only like ever accessed it like once. Okay. So on my Facebook feed, all of my friends are changing their profile picture to be the French flag, right? Raise your hands if you've done this. Yes, good, good. Okay. Cool, I like it. Sure, fine, change your profile picture, whatever. Number one, it doesn't change anything. Number two, it drives me crazy because the day before the Paris attacks, there's a bombing in Beirut, Lebanon. Anyone change your profile picture to the Lebanese flag? Anybody? Anybody? No. Why? Because nobody covered it in the news. It was like a sentence before the Paris attacks. It was like, oh, by the way, 100 people were killed in Lebanon yesterday, but the Paris attacks, 127, right? Now, please don't get me wrong. I am not saying that the Paris, it's a very big deal because Paris is it's a powerful country and that's very scary. But the reality of it is that the media told you what to care about. The media drove that to you. You changed your profile picture to the French flag because every time you've turned on the news for the last 4 days, it's telling you about the Paris attacks. It's not telling you about the Lebanese attacks. Why is that? Right? Does it mean that the Lebanese people are any more important than the Parisians who died? Does it mean that it's any less scary that someone bombed them and Paris? It's that the media told you what to, they did that. They agenda set what you wanted to believe. They set what you cared about. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be cared about. But you have to understand that what the media gives you isn't the end all be all. It's not all of the news. It's like this whole police officers getting in these altercations with African Americans. We have so many issues in our race relations. The media has decided that every single night they're going to tell you about the police officer that shot the African American who didn't have a gun, or the African American who got beat up by this. They're not going to tell you about the times that the African American kid, went to college and didn't feel like they felt like they belonged there because everybody else was white. That's not sensational. That's not going to get them viewers. What's going to get them viewers is the body cam of the law enforcement person who's taking down an African American. The media makes you believe that that's an issue because that's what they give you every single day. But it doesn't mean that there isn't other things going on that the media has chosen not to. Does that make sense? Yes. It's like President Obama just did this. At the Oregon shooting, he did a press conference after, and he said, we all do this. Somebody goes and kills all of these people, and I get into this press room, and I tell you all the details, and I tell you how sad we are, and the news media puts it on their news for the night, and we all think about it for a week, and then next week we move on. Nobody talks about it anymore, and nobody cares. And no one's trying to change the system because it's become normal to us. It's been okay for us that this happens all the time. So we did it in Newtown, we did it in Columbine, we did it in the movie theaters. We do this where we talk about it for 2 days and then we move on because the media moves on and we believe what the media gives us every single day. And that's not a problem, but you have to understand the enormous impact that the media has on what you care about on a day-to-day basis, right? Okay, now I'm getting off my soapbox. Managed news. This is information generated and distributed by the government. If you get all your news from the White House website, this is managed news. The White House isn't going to publish the thing that they did wrong. The White House isn't going to say, oh, the president screwed that one up. That's managed news. You have to make sure that where you're getting your news is news. Fox News, MSNBC, Comedy Central. These are all managed news, maybe not necessarily by the government, but by a specific party platform. And then influence of political events, the life cycle effect. In your chapter 6 review, you're talking a little bit about this in one of the answers. It's the idea that as you get older, your political tendencies will change. Even if you really don't want them to, they will. It's because you care about different things when, you're young. I remember voting in 2009. It was my very first presidential election, and I cared about, I don't even know what I cared about when I was 18. Now I care about the fact that who's going to fix my problem of student loan debt? Who's going to make sure that I can afford my first house? Who's going to make, that's the things I care about with my candidates when I go to vote. It's not what I cared about when I was 18, because I wasn't there, right? It's when I have kids, I'm going to care about the candidate who's going to give my kids the most safety, who's going to, have some laws in place to monitor the internet, because I don't want my kids to be cyberbullied. Stuff like that. It's going to change. It just does. It's always how it is. And then the generational effect. This is the idea that your generation is going to emerge as a new class of voters that has a very different experience as Americans. You've grown up in a society where it is much more acceptable to be out as a homosexual. Your grandparents did not. That will affect how you vote. We know that. The fact that you've grown up knowing people, having a face to that issue, knowing maybe what it feels like, being able to express that out loud, that's going to change how you vote. And that's what political scientists are really interested in learning about. They want to know what you're going to do when you turn 18. Who are you going to vote for? You're the people that they actually get to change. You're the people who might actually switch sides because you haven't voted for someone yet. But you're also the people who don't vote. Generationally, 18 to 20 are the lowest amount of people who vote. Okay, demographic influences. This is what I love. I absolutely love this stuff. I could just study it for days. Years, maybe. Okay, education. Now, obviously there are outliers here, okay? So please make sure that you understand that what we're talking about here is the majority. It's obviously not fact. It's like not, everybody. But we know that the more degrees you have, if you have a postgraduate degree, you're increasingly democratic. The more degrees you have, the more democratic you are. If you have a high school diploma, the more you are to be a Republican. And we could debate that why, but we won't. Influence of economic status. We know that if you have less economic status, you do not have as much of an income, you tend to be more liberal. You tend to be in favor of government programs. Why? Because they're using them. Because you might need them. When you are wealthy, high income, high economic status, tend to be more conservative. You like the idea of government not getting involved in too many things. Okay. Religious influence, so denomination, Catholics, Lutherans, Muslims, things like that. There really isn't a divide here. So there isn't one denomination that is Democratic or Republican. The only one, and your book points this out, the only one that we can really see is that people of the Jewish faith tend to be more liberal. But really, most denominations are a little bit of everything. What ends up becoming the factor is the next one, which is your religiosity. Basically, how much are you practicing whatever religion you're practicing? Are you a Christmas, Easter Catholic? Are you going to church every week? Are you involved in a youth group? Are you Do you not go to church ever? But do you say that, I am a Christian or I'm a Muslim, but you don't really practice it? That will change. So we know, let me get this fact here really quickly. Voters who are more devout, voters who are more religiously active, tend to be more Republican. Now again, there are always outliers, but again, we tend to see that people who practice their religion more frequently tend to be more Republican. The only exception here is African Americans. African Americans tend to be more democratic, even if they're very religious. And that kind of moves into the influence of race and ethnicity. African Americans on average are somewhat conservative on some issues, like same-sex marriage and abortion, but they're also liberal in social welfare, civil liberties, and foreign policy. As a group, as a race, we tend to see they lean in specific ways for specific issues. The piece you need to know here is Latinos. Latinos are a group, a race, an ethnicity, really, that haven't really decided yet. We don't have very good statistical information about what the Latino population tends to do. And a lot of that is because a lot of them are first-time voters. A lot of them are becoming citizens and voting for the first time. And so we don't have a consistent history. What that means is that, especially in the 2016 presidential election, you're going to see candidates who really try and buy that vote. That will matter. It will determine some states as a fact. It's why you see candidates like Marco Rubio on the Republican stage. It's because the Republican Party wants to see if he can bring some of those Latino voters over to their party. It's also why, if you watched the Democratic debate last week, as they were talking about immigration and talking about illegals, one of the Republican candidates said the Democratic Party is high-fiving right now. Because the more that the Republican Party makes Latinos feel like they are illegals or problems, the more they're going to go to the Democratic Party. And so you're going to see the parties be very careful about what they say because they don't want to lose this potential swing vote. They want to try and see if they can get those Latino votes to tend to go towards one way or the other. The gender gap, so what do men and women do? It's the difference between the percentage of women who vote for a particular candidate and the percentage of men who vote for a particular candidate. There's a graph that's next on this slide. It's also in your book. It talks about what women and men have been doing for the specific parties in the last candidates. We know that women are more likely to oppose the death penalty and force abroad. They tend not to be in favor of sending troops overseas. We also know that women are more concerned about the environment. They're more supportive of social welfare, and they are more flexible in extending civil rights to gays and lesbians. As a group, as a gender, these are some of the tendencies that we see. And again, there are all sorts of different reasons why women care about these things as opposed to other things. We're going to stop now there because the bell's going to ring in about 20 seconds. And we'll talk, or not, and then we'll talk about the reasons for the gender gap tomorrow.